Well, welcome to the ever chaotic workshop, and this is my Akai 4000DS reel-to-reel tape recorder, which is probably from the early to mid 1970s, and I've had this now for probably just over a year, but I've never used it very much because every time I've used it, it's never, shall we say, gone very well. Every time I've played or recorded a tape on this machine, whenever I used to start the tape off, the tape would be chewed up between the capstan and the pinch roller here, and that's not very desirable, especially on pre-recorded tapes that have got music on you don't want to ruin. And originally I thought this was caused by the pinch roller here. This is the original one, and it's very dry, hard, cracked, and generally worn out. It's not very rubbery, and it's sort of got the texture of plastic more than rubber. I've tried cleaning it and putting some rubber restorer on it to improve the friction between it and the capstan and tape, and a friend of mine has also tried to do this as well, and both times it's not really improved matters. Unfortunately, I was barking up the wrong tree, because it was nothing to do with this pinch roller and capstan. It was to do with something a lot more simpler, and this can often be the case. You look at what's causing a problem and you overlook other things that are causing the problem, and sometimes these are much simpler things, and the cause was these hubs which go over the spools to clamp the spools onto the spindles and onto the take-up hubs. And unfortunately, bearing in mind this machine is nearly 50 years old, the original hubs that came with this machine are made out of rubber, and it was a very soft rubber and has gone brittle and disintegrated with age. So the previous owner I bought this machine from had these hubs made up on a 3D printer, and they're very clever, these 3D printers, and they will copy something exactly as it is and replicate something in this sort of black plastic material. And the only problem is he had actually copied these from sort of aftermarket hubs. So these are nothing like the originals at all. The originals look more like a cone than this. And so these were actually ones that he had bought off of a hi-fi company, and that do these sort of parts. And he'd copied those. They were quite expensive to buy, I believe, so it was cheaper for him to replicate them using his 3D printer, which is a very good idea, but unfortunately it just didn't work. And if I take one off, they originally looked something like this, with these sort of cone bases attached to them. These are the bits that I've cut off, because unfortunately these cones were pushing the centre of this hub away from the retaining groove on the spindle, so they didn't work. They didn't hold the spool tight to the hub. I've now cut these off using a Stanley knife blade, and they've come off cleanly, thank goodness. And what I've done is to use epoxy resin, or glue rather, epoxy glue, and glued these two washers onto the base of these retaining hubs. The outer one is mainly for decorative purposes really, and the one on the inside is the one that does the job. This just allows enough space for the hub, retaining hub, to fit against the spool tightly. And of course the washers themselves are made out of rubber, so that helps with a bit of grip. I've done the same with this one. They're not necessarily very pretty to look at from this side, but that's not the side you look at, of course. Once they're on the hubs, they look quite smart. They don't look ugly at all. They look as if they've been on this machine from new. But in fact, what actually came with this machine, they were very, very different to look at. But it doesn't matter what they look like. The main thing is they do the job. And now these cones are not pushing these hub caps away from the spindle. They fit nice and tight, and the extra washer I put in there gives it that extra bit of grip too. So now these hubs are firmly in place and there is no movement. The tape now runs true to these guides, and most importantly to the capstan here. So there is no movement in the tape, and the tape has no tendency to drift across the pinch roller and capstan. And that's what was causing all the trouble. But I just hadn't realised it. It's taken me over a year to work that one out. I'd always noticed that these had a tendency to sort of wobble, but I didn't really think they were wobbling enough to cause all that. But clearly they were. I've been playing a few tapes this evening and yesterday evening since I made the modifications, and I haven't had a single tape get chewed up and mangled up between the pinch roller and the capstan, so it's obviously done the trick, thank goodness. I do like it when some repairs are simple, and this one was. Very, very reassuring sometimes that these things can be repaired with just a little bit of thought, some epoxy glue and a couple of washers. I don't think I would have much luck trying to find some original retaining hubs for this machine, because they will have all done the same thing that the ones that came with this had done, and they just fall to bits. 50 years is a long time for a material like rubber, and it does degrade with time. And talking about that, really this pinch roller does need to be replaced, because that too has degraded with time, and it's gone very hard. It's like plastic, and it's got these very minute sort of cracks and crazing going on, but it doesn't seem to affect the quality of sound or the speed. So at the moment it's safe to leave that as it is, and this machine is actually going on to a new owner tomorrow. Someone I know wants to swap it for another machine, and so I will warn him about this, and it's up to him if he decides to go ahead with replacing that pinch roller at some point. I don't expect he will, whilst it still works okay, and to be honest I'd be inclined to leave it as it is. If it works, leave it alone, you know. Which now we've proved this wasn't the cause of the tape being chewed up, I think it's safe to do so. But lovely machine. Slightly overcomplicated for what it is. These controls get on my nerves a bit, these sort of rotary controls. Some people love those, but I prefer the old-fashioned piano key buttons on reel-to-reel tape recorders. It feels a lot more robust to me and easier to use, a bit more user-friendly. This is sort of a little bit fiddly, and yeah, it's not really my cup of tea, but the real hi-fi buffs out there love these, and these are going now for between £150 and £200. Not what I paid for it, because I actually swapped it for something else. I think I swapped it for a CD player. Someone wanted a high-end CD player I had, and CD players don't do a lot for me, so it was a good swap at the time. Anyway, rambling on as usual. So that's that fixed. I'm just going to do a few more test recordings on it, make sure I'm happy with it, and then tomorrow afternoon off it goes. So that's about it from here, and hope to see you in another video at a future date. Bye for now.